What do you think about that? What do you think about those two tracks?
That's a good one. Ooh. You know,
stumped her, Kevin. This never happened.
he did.
You an entrepreneur, I got what you need.
Hey there, my loves. Welcome back to CPTV. I'm CP, and you are in the place for aspiring and scaling entrepreneurs who want to turn their passions into businesses and their businesses ultimately into freedom. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and subscribe, because every single Tuesday on this channel, I am giving you the training on the step-by-step business processes that you can implement immediately into your business and life, so that you can get to that level of entrepreneurial freedom that you deserve and desire. And let me tell you, it's a good place to be. So you heard me. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button and click that bell so you don't miss any of it. And of course, if you like this, then show me. Smash that like button and tell me exactly what you think, what you need in the comments below. Hey guys, so I was recently a guest on the Council of Smaller Enterprises, COSE, which is like the largest chamber in the country's podcast, and I had an absolute blast. But aside from how much fun we had, I wasn't 100% certain that I was going to share that podcast video with you guys, because I wasn't really sure if the content in the end would be relevant to my CPTVers. But after it was done, I realized that there's a small population of folks, mainly my CP insiders, who actually know my journey and my story. And by CP insiders, I mean those folks who are on my email list and receive weekly content from me and special offers and all that stuff like that. And if you are interested in joining my CP insiders list, I will go ahead and put the link in the comments in the description below so that you can just click and get in. Anyway, I typically don't talk about my journey, I know, which I do feel is a very personal experience. And I don't share it with a whole lot of folks outside of my inner circle. And I realized that if I was truly going to stop doing a disservice to my audience, mainly you guys, then I needed to talk about it. Because as we were doing this podcast interview and they were throwing out the questions to me about my journey and about my businesses and about my life and about working with my husband and, you know, my visions and all that kind of stuff and what I love to do in the community, as they were throwing out all of these things, I really started thinking, and I realized that everything I was saying is true for a lot of people and happens to a lot of hustling entrepreneurs' experiences. So it became very clear to me that I needed to take advantage of this relaxed, transparent conversation. So if you've ever wondered what my real true journey and philosophies and experience as an entrepreneur has been, then keep watching and let's get to work.
Your story is always evolving. I think we talked about in our last podcast when Kevin and I were talking with Alex Gertzberg, how we are so drawn to people that see something that needs to be fixed, or they see a new opportunity, and rather than referring it to someone they know, they jump in and create a new business around it. And you've been so successful at doing that. So that's why we love hearing your story. And I don't know if you want to go back to the beginning. How'd you even get started? What gave you that entrepreneurial seizure that made you say, I'm going to be my own boss?
Absolutely.
And if those of you who are listening can't see this, but you'll see it if you watch it. It says Cheryl Perez, SheBOSS under her name.
It does. And it's funny because when I get asked that question a lot, and people always say, you know, kind of how'd you get started? And I always have to start, honestly, when I was like in 7th grade was my very first business. And it was more like a supply chain thing, because I used to buy now laters at our candy store, penny store that I could walk to. And I would then take it, and at lunchtime we had recess because I went to a Catholic school. So they would put us on the parking lot, which was like, now that I think back, probably slightly like inappropriate for children. that they would just like put us on this concrete parking lot to play. And the church stairs, because most Catholic schools are like attached to a church. So the church stairs led, like they were huge and they would lead down into the parking lot. And I would sit there for the majority of my recess with my noun-laters. I would like set them up. I got little boxes and I'd have them separated by flavors. And I became known on the playground as the girl you could go and like buy noun-laters from. So I'd buy them for 10 cents. I'd sell them for 25 cents, supply and demand. Like, you're not even supposed to have candy in Catholic school. So I was also probably a bad influence under that idea. But I would sell them and I would get the money and then I would go buy more. And I would, that's how I hated asking my mom for money. I grew up in the inner city of Youngstown. She was like an LPN. She was struggling and I hated asking her for money because I could tell that it would stress her out. Just as any parent, when you don't have it and your kids want something and you want to give it to them, it stresses you out. So I hated asking her, and that's how I would make money in 7th grade. And I did that until I got called into the principal's office and basically was told, look,
Oh, you're kidding.
you got to stop. And I'm like, but it's so entrepreneurial, So, but I've always had some type of, in everything I've done, I've always had some type of business. I mean, even in college, my parents did not want me to work my first 2 years. So I wasn't allowed to get a job. And I was like, I'm going to be absolutely broke. I mean, what am I supposed to do? And so I did all kinds of stuff. I did nails. I got my nails done and I would watch her. I learned how to do it. Then my nail tech in Youngstown would send me supplies and I would do people's nails in my dorm room. I would fry fish dinners and sell them from my dorm room. I had all these businesses. So because technically it wasn't a job, it wasn't interfering with my classes. And so I made money that way. I did all kinds of like little business opportunities. And my brain set was always like, how can we monetize this? Like, how can we make money, doing this? And so that's kind of like how it started. And I really didn't get into a technical business until after I finished graduate school. And I went overseas and started working with USAID as an independent contractor. That was really the first job that really was a business, because at the time I didn't understand what an independent contractor meant. It was just, oh, it's like my job, I still work for them, they just don't take out taxes. It's kind of like what my brain told me. I didn't realize then that I should have been maximizing that business opportunity. And my job was to go into nonprofit organizations that were receiving funding from USAID and to start them, to literally get them set up from the ground up, to set up all of their infrastructure, to set up all of their basics. And I would go in and live somewhere for 3 months, usually 6 weeks to 12 weeks, get them all set up and then leave. But I thought I had a job, and I had other people that would come to me and say, can you help me start this? Can you help me start this organization? And I'm like, no, I already have a job, no, you have a business and you should have been all over those contracts, CP. But I'd be like, no, I already have a job, because I thought of myself as an employee for this organization, even though I contractually could do what I wanted to and do what I was doing for them, for other people. And so that business was pretty much a flop because I never really did it as a business when I could have. I was still in that 9 to 5 mentality, right? I was still in that.
You know what, Cheryl, one of the things that comes to mind when you say that is that so many of us, particularly that went to school a while ago, okay, we were focused not necessarily on entrepreneurship as young people are today. We were focused on education, career.
Yeah.
And so you didn't see the opportunity from the standpoint of entrepreneur. You saw and thought job. And I totally get it. I totally get it.
That's exactly what I did. And it was, now that I look back, I, was frustrated by my lack of recognition that I turn everything into a business, because I didn't really identify as an entrepreneur. I was a little Black girl in Youngstown. There weren't other Black female CEOs. There weren't other Black female entrepreneurs telling me you can do this. I was supposed to go to school and be a lawyer or be a nurse or be a teacher. And that there was never that influence in my life to tell me, oh, this is exactly what I'm doing. So I just didn't know. And then, I came back home and continued to do consulting contracts on the side. because I did still have a network of people that would send folks to me, but I couldn't go on site and start them. So I would do grant writing, set up fundraising plans, just different aspects of things for nonprofits, and now for entrepreneurs who wanted to start their nonprofits. And I've always thought of it even as a nonprofit builder, I should say, that nonprofits really should be structured very similarly to businesses. And so, I used to say, well, yeah, but your fundraising is really your sales team, or you have to really market. You have to do your marketing as well. Because nonprofits were like, we're grassroots. We're just going out there and serving the public and not necessarily functioning like a business. And so that was kind of my blue ocean. I used to teach them how to set up their nonprofits and think as entrepreneurs and run their nonprofits as businesses versus, just your traditional thing. So that was kind of how I started. And, it evolved. I loved it. I did decide to go back into corporate. I started working in sales. I worked for a nonprofit first in fundraising. And then I said, actually a really good friend of mine, who's now my husband, at the time was like, how much money did you just raise? And, I think I'd raised like $1 million or something. And he's like, how much of that do you get? And I was like, I don't get any of it. I get my salary. Like, I can't get any of it. And he's like, yeah, maybe you should volunteer for nonprofits and get a real sales job, because you'd have made like $100,000 off of that one little fundraiser. And it got me thinking, I guess for-profit might not necessarily be a bad thing. So I decided to start playing around with different aspects of sales. I always loved healthcare. I always loved the business side of things because my mom was a nurse, her mom was a nurse, everybody was nurses. And I said, all right, let me look into the business side of healthcare. What does that mean? And of course, insurance kind of came up, and healthcare benefits and benefits consulting. And so I decided to start working for United Healthcare. And that really did begin my belief. That experience, while it was amazing and I loved working there, put the nail in the coffin for me that I was not destined to work in corporate 9-to-5 world. I just wasn't.
So let's pause there. You started a traditional path. You did an undergraduate degree. Did you do a graduate degree right after that?
I did, right after that.
So then you did that, and then you started working and found out a little bit that, you know what, I know what this is, and I'm not long for this world. Okay. Fast forward from there to where you are now with Cheryl C. Perez Brands. What's that look like? How does it take where you've been and actually manifest itself into businesses that you're doing right now?
I've always come back to that same notion of helping entrepreneurs realize their dreams. And that's kind of like my why. I realized that my why was always the things that fundamentally made me feel good in life was helping other people achieve their goals and achieve their idea of success.
You talk a lot about, we've talked a lot about how you help other businesses and how that's really been purposeful for you, but back to that finding your why and thinking about that next generation. I know that you do a lot with mentoring too, and maybe even a little bit specifically on young females and how you start to help them think about. Talk about that a little bit, because I love that piece of you as well.
It's my favorite thing in the world to talk to girls and see the looks on their faces when I say to them, have you ever thought about starting a business? And I had a girl, I did a speech at my old high school in Youngstown, and she said, oh, I want to be a hairstylist. And I said, awesome, you want to be an entrepreneur? And she was like, no, I want to be a hairstylist. And I said, you mean like work for like Great Clips or something like that? And she's like, no, I want to have my own shop, and I want to have my own clients and my own customers. I said, that's being an entrepreneur. And she was like, is it? I said, yeah, you'd be the CEO. And her eyes just got so big. It was like no one had ever said to her before that that's in essence what she would be doing. And it made my heart sing, and it always does, because like I said, there aren't very many, and I do focus on working with young girls who are typically in underrepresented populations, in poor neighborhoods, because we oftentimes don't have those examples of influence. That look on young girls' faces that I see It just, every single time, it just makes my day. And I do, a lot of people ask me, it's funny because a lot of my marketing and content, I mean, I have, obviously a marketing process, and a lot of that content is very clear who my ideal customer avatar is. It's very clear. So I oftentimes get inbox or DMs, I get tons of DMs from guys like, do you work with men? Like, can I talk to you too? And I'm like, no, I absolutely work with men. It's just who resonates with me is the experiences that I have as a female entrepreneur. And then you add, a mompreneur into it. And then you add, when I had my first business, I was young. Like, nobody took me seriously at all because I finished graduate school when I was 21. So, they thought I was a kid, and it was very difficult. So I would lie about my age. Like, I legitimately did not know how old I really was. I think I was 29 until I was actually 29.
Megan, the flip side of that story is, don't expect her to tell us the truth out how old she is today.
Yeah, right. She's still 29.
I would totally bump it up now to because 29, I was a mess. So I would totally bump it up into the 30s. I'm totally comfortable and actually feel really good about that.
It's interesting, particularly for women, I think, to be comfortable in the world that they're in and be themselves. The issue that I think you went through is that you had to be yourself and figure out how to be forceful in being yourself. It's nothing worse than trying to be someone that you're not. You have to be comfortable in your own skin, but then figure out still how to be effective. And I think that women have that challenge. But I also know that absolutely every workplace and every environment where there are women that are functioning, I was just telling Connie that this the other day, they work better. Now, they work better if there's diversity in the room. But they work better if there are women in the room too. And I just think that sometimes, and I grew up through this, there's so much darn testosterone in the room. It's like, can you just look, and it's like everybody's, and so I just think that organizations that are too male dominated don't make the progress that they could. I know that organizations that don't have the diversity don't make the progress that they should.
Right.
But if you don't have women, if I don't walk in a room and see some women, I'm kind of like, I just know what to expect. And I'm old enough now that
there aren't going to be any processes. There's going to be no plans. We're just going to bring it. That's what I see when I walk into a room full of men. I'm like, oh shit, let me get the strategy out. We need some steps in here because, and I'm just joking because there are obviously men out there who are amazing at planning and all that stuff. But generally that is what we bring to the table. We bring that, that planning nature that we are naturally, I don't know if it's estrogen or what it is.
Well, it's not just the planning nature in my mind. It's also the de-escalation, make some progress nature. Okay. So let me ask you this. What advice, and you probably kind of gave me this, but sum it up. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs of any type starting out? What would you say? And here's one of the things, I'm going to tee this up for you.
Okay.
Would you recommend a path, Cheryl, that says, for example, start your business young, start first thing, whatever, or go get some experience and then start, go out on your own? What do you think about that? What do you think about those two tracks?
That's a good one. Ooh.
You stumped her, Kevin. This never happens.
He did. Like, would you recommend to go get some experience first? Okay. So I think that people nowadays, young people want to start businesses so immediately that they are doing amazing things. So I would be totally lying if I said you have to go work for somebody else before you can successfully start your own business. So I would say, you'll know when you are just in a space where you're just no longer personally fulfilled and no longer happily walking through your day-to-day when you say, I've got to do what I've got to do regardless of my timing, right?
But that sounds a little bit like get some experience until you kind of reach that point.
I mean, if you don't get the experience of working for somebody else I would say, if you're going to get experience, it has to be experience in the exact same business idea that you want to start.
Okay.
So that means that you already kind of have to have this business in the works, really, before your goal is to kind of go out and shadow and get some experience. Like I had a coachee, a young, beautiful college student. She makes amazing organic hand creams, bath bombs, you know, and it's just her ingredients are expensive and amazing. But she was straight out of college and she was like kind of doing these in her dorm room and wasn't selling any. And, you know, we started working through it. And I said, well, that's because it's too expensive for the college students that are in your dorm. Like you've got organic cocoa shea, $50 products. You can't charge them this. So I said to her, I want you to go work, get your summer job and go work for this, you know, the company that's in the malls. They do the body butters and the bath bombs. I said, go work for them. I want you to go apply for a retail job and work for them, you know, and that's your summer job. And I want you to do that for the next year. And you're going to get a lot of ideas and experience around how they produce their products, how they do their retail, what their relationships look like, how they market, who their target market is, because I knew that that experience was necessary for her.
But let me give you another way to look at that. Another way to look at that is that great idea, even great product, but had absolutely no idea about how to take that product to market, how to build a financial model, how to build a sales model, how to build a business plan, those types of things. And so what you really said was go learn some of that by observation and then
put it together
and then do that.
Yep, okay. Exactly what you said, Kevin, is what I do. Give me an idea and I will help you set it up, get it all set up and structured. And for her, that meant you got to go make sure that this is what you want to do. Because she was like, well, I really want to help college students. I'm like, not with expensive body butters. I'm going to get me some Johnson & Johnson when I'm in college.
So both of you also work with your spouses and you have sort of family businesses in a sense. And I know we have tons of COSE members and people who are probably listening to this podcast who are working with family members, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. So what's your advice on how you guys have made that work? And what are the really amazing things about that? And what are some of the not as amazing things about that?
As you guys know, I have CPTV, which is a YouTube channel, and you can find it at Cheryl C. Perez if you go on YouTube. And my husband and I did an episode on how to be in love with and as a SheBOSS. And it was an interview with him and I, and we talked about the top 5 questions that I get all the time from my coachees about dealing with spouses as when you are trying to be a female entrepreneur. But then I also, like I have one coachee that her and her husband, you know, he'll jump on, like when she's done, he jumps on, he's like, okay, so what do I need to do? And we did this entire episode on it, and it talked about the top 5 things. And, you know, we talked about decision making, you know, how we deal and navigate with decision making, working together, and then also being at home. We talked about jealousy because, you know, I'm around a lot of men all the time, and him going through that process of dealing with it. We talked about time, him understanding, and me also understanding how important it is to to respect those time differences in that time barrier. Because in the beginning of our relationship, when he knew he was dating a entrepreneur that he actually made, I just want to be clear on that, because I always like to say, this is your fault, dude. I don't think he really knew how much I would be working. And in the beginning of our relationship, it was like traumatic for him. And I was just sitting around like, what are you talking about? I'm working, like I'm building this dream of ours. And he sat down with me, him and the kids actually had an intervention. And because I was working, there was no limit. I had no boundaries. And they said, we need you to make boundaries, because we don't care how much of a dream you build if we don't get to see you. And so then we started kind of negotiating those things. And so it is special and different. My husband and I have worked together and built every single business that we've had together. And we had one period for 2 years where we did not work together. And our relationship, I call that our rough patch. Now, Rico didn't even know a rough patch existed. Like, he didn't even recognize that it was taking place at the time, which means that my rough patches aren't rough enough.
That's just how smooth you are.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what do you mean? We were at a Mexican restaurant, Jay-Z and Beyonce. This is when they were going through their thing, and they made it through it. And I said to him, aren't you just glad? Because I love Jay-Z and Beyonce. He's like, I said, aren't you glad that they made it through their rough patch? I mean, I'm so glad that we made it through ours. And he goes, rough patch?
What was that?
He's like, this is a true story. He's like, rough patch. I didn't even know we had a rough patch. I'm like, yeah, it was like 2 years long. He's like, damn, we had a rough patch for 2 years? Like, he had no idea. But it was during that time where he wasn't working with me, because I am very, like, we spent a lot of our alone time talking about work, catching up on work, versus now we catch up on work at work. And when we go home, we don't catch up on work. When we're alone, we don't catch up on work because we're already filled in. Well, when he wasn't working with me, we spent all of our time getting filled in. And so our lives pretty much involved working away from each other. And then when we were together, talking about work. And it was affecting our relationship. So I've worked with my children. Some of them have been good. Some of them have been not so good. But I would definitely say for us that working together is a better fit, and we do navigate it very well, with the exception of the fact that he hates when I tell him that he's done something wrong. We just have to go through a whole like discipline. But I've written a whole process for how to deal with that. Like, he knows. I'm like, come into my office, have a seat, the whole dynamic. I sit on the other side. I'm like, look, I need to be able to give you feedback if we're going to continue to work together.
Is that bi-directional? When you do something wrong, does he do the same thing?
No, I'm the CEO. No.
That's what I thought. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you see the SheBOSS on there, right? No,
Yeah.
no, it's true. He does. He tells me he's my level head. He's my level head. Because as an entrepreneur, my visions are all huge. They're all the way out here. And he's always like, bring it home, bring it home. How are we going to do that? Yes.
That's great.
We could talk on this thing for like another hour. So that means, Cheryl, you have to come back for another episode. So we told you this one would be fun. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone got themselves a cocktail during this, because
I know, right?
Wow. Just watching that video back made me think about that amazing conversation and that trip down memory lane. Hopefully, some of what you heard has inspired you, has made you realize that you are not alone in your journey, and has helped you see that everyone starts from the beginning, just like you. But also gives you some ideas and strength to keep growing with, right? To keep thinking out of the box with, to keep thriving, to keep striving. And of course, that was an edited version. So if you want to hear the full podcast interview, I will make sure that I put the link down below in the description for you to access. And I have to say thank you. I told you I don't like being vulnerable, y'all. And I know talking about my journey may not necessarily put me in this space of vulnerability, but to me, to a certain degree, it does. So I appreciate you watching, and I will also appreciate you liking and sharing and subscribing. And until next time, my loves, stay safe. Mwah. Bye-bye.